All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the WatchWell Podcast. I'm Parker, and this is my co-host, Nick. Nick, how was your week?
Great week. We've had a long break. This will be our first episode posted since November.
Yeah, it's been a long break. Yeah, new year.
Yeah, had a great new year.
Rest and recharge. Back at it for another year.
Yeah.
Do you do the New Year's resolution thing or no?
I have before. One year I had a resolution to read a book a month every month, and then ended up not getting there. I read like 5 books in the first month of January, like in the month of January, and then didn't read any more books the rest of the year.
That's funny.
But yeah, I'm not a resolution guy. So yeah, what about you?
I'm a low key resolution guy. I kind of keep them to myself just so I can have I don't like to vocalize at all.
So you're a goal setter.
Yeah.
That's a little different.
Yeah. I don't like the I don't even know the lack of a better term. Like it's almost like a cliche. I don't like the cliche of it. So yeah, we just got yearly goals. I think that's healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no like resolutions or anything like that, I guess. Okay, so if you guys are watching, we're glad to be back. It is a new year. The first movie review of 2024 is going to be Nefarious. It's a newer movie. We actually, fun fact, had this recorded, and we were going to release it back in October of 2023, but due to some technical difficulties, we weren't able to. So we get a Halloween type movie at the beginning of the year in January, and then we'll do another Halloween movie October 2024. So Nick,
this fills the gap for what's coming, right? We got some good stuff coming, so this is kind of a gap filler.
Lots of good stuff in the works here. So Nick, why don't we talk about the parental advisory and the plot for a little bit, and then we'll get into the movie.
Yeah, so Nefarious is rated R, and even though it's rated R, it's kind of intense. There's intense situations and things that people might, if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, it's not very scary. At least I didn't think so, but there are some very high tense situations. So if you're sensitive to that, you might not want to watch it at a young age. But he ended up not, but we invited our son to watch it, and he's 15. So, I wouldn't have any problem with that, even though it's rated R. There's no profanity, there's no nudity, at least no profanity that I could remember, and I don't think there is, and there's no nudity or anything like that in it. There's just very tense situations. So, in that sense, I would say it's fine for just about any teenager. I don't know about a 13-year-old. I mean, depending on the 13-year-old, if they can handle those tense situations and they have some maturity, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like it's not like Saw or anything like that where there's a ton of gore and.
I mean, it's not even like
things
it
like that. Yeah, it's not even.
And I didn't think it was.
Which is both are rated R. It's so different, so very different movies, for sure.
But I also wouldn't say.
But this is also.
It's very scary.
Yeah, just tense.
It's more like jump scary. It's like coming out of like different places, and it's like, I gotcha, or, certain camera techniques, and it's, coming around a corner or whatever, it scares you. Coming out of a projector, like in the movie, But then I would say Nefarious is more real life heavy topics that are scary when you grapple with the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and I don't think it was. So it's definitely classified as a horror movie, a Christian horror movie. For those that don't know, this was supposedly. I don't know the specific production company or producers or anything, but supposedly a Christian production, and it is definitely a horror movie and classified as one. But I don't think it's a horror movie in the sense that it's trying to scare the audience. I think it's a horror movie in the sense that the main character is in an impossible situation, like in a situation that they are terrified of. Even though the audience isn't scared of what's going on, the main character is in a situation that is absolutely terrifying. And so I
I
think
would
it's
I
a
would
horror
agree
movie
with
in
that.
that sense.
I would agree with that because the way the movie is filmed is as if you are the therapist going through the film.
Right. Yeah.
It's you encountering everything as he's encountering everything. You're not
Yep.
you're kind of watching it happen, but the way that things are being revealed, it's as if you could take like you could walk in his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that that's probably where the intensity and maybe terror would come from. Because if this
Yeah.
really happened, that's you would be probably out of your out of your mind scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Which
um,
he eventually gets to.
right. So go ahead, set up the plot for us.
So we have um, Nefarious. I'm going to get to him in a second, or that name in a second. But we have Edward Wayne Brady, who is a convicted murderer who is on the doorstep of the death penalty. And he is supposed to be reviewed for, he's claiming that he's demon possessed, and they want him to be assessed by a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know the exact credential of the doctor in the movie, but a therapist, whatever role he actually has. But they want him to be assessed and for whether or not he's fit to be put to death for the crimes that he committed. And so Dr. James Martin, who is the main therapist, the doctor in the story, comes to the prison to sit in a room and talk to Edward Wayne Brady, who's claiming to be demon possessed, and he's claiming to be possessed by a demon named Nefarious. And the demon then in the story is the one who's constantly communicating with the therapist, not Edward Wayne Brady. And the demon claims responsibility for all of the crimes, but then furthermore, the demon tells, because Dr. James Martin is so skeptical, just absolutely denying that this is true. He's basically saying this is an act. That this man actually is not demon possessed. Demons aren't real. God's not real. None of this is real. That's the position of Dr. James Martin at the beginning of the movie. But Nefarious tells that doctor that he will commit 3 murders by the time their conversation is done. And so that sets the stage for the story as it plays out and what those 3 murders are. And you can kind of tell from the beginning, at least I thought it was fairly predictable that this is where they were going, that the murder of Edward Wayne Brady, by saying he's fit for the death penalty, is the last murder that the doctor will commit. And that's what's foretold by Nefarious, the demon. And that's the conflict and everything that goes on. Anything to add? Anything that I forgot in there?
Nope. I mean, outside of just going into a little bit more detail, I would say no. I think you pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
It's the doctor coming into conflict with a physical and spiritual reality that he does not believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the entire conflict, is you have a demon confronting a man who thinks demons aren't real. And that's really the central conflict of everything that's going on in the movie, all of the conversation.
And the
kind of
demon
the process.
and more of that, and more on that, like a little bit deeper, is the demon is saying that essentially what the Bible teaches is true.
Mm-hmm. But
So
then
he
hates
doesn't,
it.
and that he hates it.
Yeah.
The carpenter.
Yep. He calls Jesus the carpenter. Yep.
So,
Yeah.
which I thought was awesome. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. So what were the 3 murders that he was
so the 3 murders,
committing? There was
at the very end, was it Edward or Edwin?
Yeah,
Edward Wayne.
Edward.
Edward Edward Brady is put to death at the end. So you come to find out throughout the story that Dr. Martin and his girlfriend, I believe, or fiance, have an abortion. So that's the second murder. And help me out with the third one. The is it his mom?
Yeah,
It
assisted
is mom,
suicide.
right? Yeah, assisted suicide
Yep.
because it was like she was older, right? And she was in pain and
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So now so those are the three murders, and that also kind of represents the three acts of the movie too. Like if you were to, movies typically have a 3-act structure. So in Act 1, the murder that is taking center stage is the assisted suicide one, and then Act 2 is the abortion, and then Act 3 is the death
Right.
penalty.
That's right.
Right. So that it kind of those three things create the entire structure of the movie. So in Act 1, the central conflict is, was that murder or was that not murder? And obviously Dr. James Martin is like, no, this was perfectly fine, right? There was nothing wrong with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes same with the abortion, and then eventually the death penalty or the condemning him to die as well. But so that creates the structure for the movie.
So you kind of started off on a morality claim there, where Dr. James Martin was saying there's nothing wrong with me putting my mother out of misery and assisting her to die.
Mm-hmm.
That seems very different than the claim that someone's on death row and you sign off on their sanity to allow them to be put to death for the crimes they committed. The death penalty is a just form of penalty if your crimes have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, you've had due process, all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the point of Nefarious's point was that Edward Wayne Brady was innocent because Nefarious was the guilty one. And signing off on it and not believing the demon, not believing Nefarious, put the blame on Edward Wayne Brady's plate, and it was a bad judgment to sign off on that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but then definitely, and then to add to that, he signs off on it out of anger.
Out of anger,
not because he wants to. It's not out of justice. It's out of
right.
pure hatred and anger.
And go
Because he
away. I
thinks
want this out of my
it'll
life.
kill.
Right.
Yeah, I want this to go away.
Right.
Yeah. It's the selfishness and the selfish desire to see this go away. And Edward Wayne Brady is just a pawn in that, from both the main character and from the demon.
Right.
So he's just kind of there, and no one is recognizing his humanity at all. It's just the therapist wants what he wants. The demon wants what he wants, which is to get to the therapist, and that's how it is. Edward Wayne Brady is just a pawn in that situation.
Yeah, man. Anything else?
So, what do you think of? So usually Christian movies, at least in my opinion, we've had a conversation about this before, but in my opinion, usually Christian movies are not good. They are not well made, and the acting is terrible. So that's just kind of a general opinion of mine of what I've seen, with some exceptions. I would say Jesus Revolution was an exception, and there are others. So what did you think of, like, the way this movie was made? The quality of this movie, things like the acting, the filming and all those various things.
I thought it was on par with any other movie.
Yeah.
And it's definitely better. It's definitely better than Batman Begins.
What? Okay, now you're just messing around. Yeah, that's not even a serious statement. Yeah. Okay. So
no,
yeah,
that was just
yeah.
to get back at you for your subtle dig at Christian movies. No, I would agree with you. I think Christian movies are 90% bad, but I think this one, I think the guy that played Nefarious and Edward Wayne Brady, I think he did well enough to deserve an award.
Yeah.
Some
To
type
flip
of award.
between the two.
Unreal.
Like the flipping between the two characters is incredible.
I
Like
thought
one
he
moment
did.
he's in
Yeah.
tears, and then the next he's this evil
Yeah.
demon, and like
Yeah.
he
I
did a
thought it
really
was
good job.
on par. Very. I mean, I thought it was on par with James McAvoy when he did Split. And the only reason
Which I
why I
haven't
think
seen Split.
and the only reason why I think James McAvoy did better was because instead of 2 people, he had to play like 7. So and
Yeah.
in and out and little boy versus a woman and like just all the different personalities that you have to play to be able to do that. Unreal, absolutely unreal. So no, I think that the acting, the cinematography, the screenplay, I thought it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Up
Yeah.
until the very end.
Yeah.
Up
The
until the
end
very
is-
end, where Christian movie is going to
Yeah.
Christian movie.
Yeah, it was awful.
It was so
It was the
bad.
worst. The ending was
It
the
was so
worst
bad.
part.
So bad.
Yeah. And so yeah, I don't even know where to go with it. It was bad. It almost ruined
This
the
is where we go.
experience of the entire movie.
That's 100% accurate. What you need to do for those of you guys that are listening that have not watched this movie, as soon as the screen goes black towards the end of the movie, hit pause and be done.
Yeah.
That's how you
If
should
you're
watch this
watching it on a
movie.
disc, eject it. If it's on
Yep.
streaming, exit out of the streaming service.
Yep. That's right.
Don't let it go any further.
As soon as you hear the screen go black and a gun go off, end the movie. Don't watch
End the
anymore.
movie. Yeah.
End the movie because
Stop it there.
after that, you get stereotypical Christian cheese ball fest, and it's awful. It's awful.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely true. And if someone like Christopher Nolan was the one directing this movie, it would have ended there.
It would have.
Right? It would have absolutely ended at that point because there's still questions left, right? You have to well, what actually happened? How did he survive? Did everything work out? You don't know. And that's where the movie should have ended, is with those questions, rather than bringing it back to where they did, which so they bring it back to a scene, an interview on Glenn Beck's TV show, which is maybe something we'll talk about in a second, which is just a absolutely cheesy interview, in my opinion. Just didn't add to the movie whatsoever. And then when Dr. James Martin walks out of that interview, there's this random old demon-possessed lady who's now possessed by Nefarious, and it ends with, I don't even know what. Does he say his name? Say the doctor's name? Is that how it ended?
I think he says something like, "Hey,
says something,
Dr. Martin," or something like that.
It was
terrible.
So
bad.
It was terrible. So bad. It's a completely different tone. It's like they filmed the movie, ended it where the screen went black, and then some overly Christian person said, "I don't think people will get it. I don't think they're going to understand this."
That's so true.
I think we have to add this next part so that people really understand, so that they really, and maybe it was genuine and trying to maybe they thought it was going to be better, but it ruined the entire thing. I probably won't even watch the movie again. And I really enjoyed it. I was really into it up to that point. I was getting,
I totally
there were parts where it was drawing me in.
Yep, you're right. I agree. 100%.
I don't even think
I saw that, and then I was like, "Oh, come on!" That was exactly what I said. I was like, in it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is insane!" And then I saw Glenn Beck, and I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!"
Why? Yeah,
you got to be kidding me.
Hey, Glenn, talk show. yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they felt like
Oh
they
my
needed to go
god.
to a talk show. I don't know if it was you that told me or someone else that told me Glenn Beck might have been one of the producers,
Yeah,
and
I
so
think he was. I think it was something in there. I think they had a budget of
he's
around
like, I need
two
to be in
million
this
or
movie.
something. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that, like, I guess the nature of the plot was that, what we haven't talked about a little bit more is that the whole point that Nefarious was revealing himself to and using Dr. James Martin was because he had his own manifesto. And Nefarious was
Hmm.
jealous of the carpenter. And for those that are listening, uh, audio only, I'm air quotes, the carpenter, Jesus. He's jealous that the carpenter has his own book and Nefarious doesn't have his own book. And he's using Dr. James Martin, who's in a position of authority because he's a doctor in psychology or whatever he was, to write and publish Nefarious's manifesto to combat the Bible. And because of that, through the experience that Dr. James Martin at the end of the movie, what Nick and I are not pulling any punches on are that Dr. James Martin writes the book, but different than Nefarious wants him to write it. Nefarious wants
It's a warning.
Nefarious wants Dr. James Martin to write it as a fear tactic to get people to be more afraid, um, in a way. And then Dr. James Martin actually, because of what he went through, writes it as a warning to people that this is real and you need to be careful and cautious. But he
Yeah.
goes on a book tour and he ends up on Glenn Beck's night show or
Christians are
whatever.
always going on book tours.
Oh
What
my
is
gosh, what is it? And James Martin says that he's not a Christian, he's just searching, and there's this lovey-dovey moment between him and Glenn Beck on the show, and it's just not needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not needed.
And then, I'm gonna jump into that Glenn Beck thing. It kind of counteracts everything that came before it. And I'm not trying to be overly mean or insulting of Glenn Beck, but maybe people know this and maybe they don't. But he's a professing Mormon. So like, here's this movie where you're presenting all of these arguments against things like assisted suicide, abortion, and the unjust execution of a criminal. Like all these arguments against this, and then the demon is expressing his hatred of Jesus, using the phrase "the carpenter," and you have Dr. James Martin, the main character, undergoing this journey to finding out that all of this is real as stated in the Word of God. And he doesn't believe yet, but then now he's here at this talk show, and the Mormon is the one encouraging him on to faith in a Christian production. Like, to put a professing Mormon into that position, to me, undermines the entire journey,
It does.
because Mormonism is not Christianity. They are not one and the same. If you are Mormon, you are not Christian. They believe in a false Christ that isn't the real Christ. And so to put him in that position it just undermines everything. So that's one element of, obviously the cheesiness and things like that really ruin it. But then that also adds to the fact that this was just unnecessary and it didn't need to happen. I don't understand why you would give the spiritual, not just moral or ethical high ground. That's not, lots of people have good morals and can do good things. They might not have a grounding or foundation for those things, but they do have good morals and things. So I wouldn't be upset if it was just like a moral high ground. But you're giving Glenn Beck in this story at the end, you're giving him a spiritual high ground of being the one to encourage that other person onto faith. And I think that's just a dangerous way to go about it. If you're gonna Christianize the movie at the end, then I don't think the best way to do that is with the Mormon. who helped fund
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Because
mean,
and your point
yeah,
being, just for clarity here, for those that may not know, your point being that Glenn Beck, a Mormon who believes that Satan is Jesus's brother, right?
hmm yeah,
Is telling the main character to go pursue a religion that doesn't believe that Satan is Jesus's brother.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess they aren't even that explicit about it though, because don't they just doesn't Glenn Beck just ask him, "Are you a believer now?"
Yeah. They're not that explicit, but I'm
He
saying
doesn't
from
say
what we know.
in what,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah, he
You're
doesn't
right.
ask. Yeah,
For the movie's sake,
so
what you're saying is correct. But I'm talking about what we
yeah,
know, and the like
true.
it would just be like I would not, as a Christian with money, going into a production, I would not sit there on, like, I think that would just be bizarre for one of us to sit and put ourselves in Glenn Beck's position.
If it was just an interview, that's one thing, but the fact that it was a moment of encouraging this person on to to believe in faith, undermines the Christian worldview that was presented previously in the film.
Right.
When you put a Mormon in that position to do that.
What do you think non-believers are going to say about this film? Just as a general, like, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think the film, I guess what I would say, fulfilled its purpose? Like being a conversation starter, trying to not be a Christian movie, but a Christian movie.
That's a good question. Um, Depending on how anti-Christianity the person is, if if a person watches this as a non-believer, but they're open, maybe they're more agnostic, or they're more they don't have any harsh opposition to Christianity, I think they would probably get something out of the movie and they would enjoy it. But I think there are probably quite a few people who went to this movie thinking they were getting, like, you know, a toned down version of Exorcist, and then probably felt, because of the presence of the ending, probably felt a bait and switch, like they were manipulated into watching a Christian movie.
Right.
That would be what I think a lot of non-believers would probably feel um, after watching this. Even if they enjoyed it up to that point, I think they probably would have felt that way. Um, and maybe even there are other parts where they would have felt that way. But I still think, yeah, it can still be a conversation starter. Um, and probably even if a non-believer watching felt manipulated into watching a Christian movie, maybe they even still, the ideas and concepts that are presented would still probably serve to start a conversation of some kind.
Right. Okay, so I guess the only thing left to talk about is our favorite parts of the movie. If we have any theological disagreements, and that's about it. I think we've touched on everything else.
Yeah. I think the best part of the movie is the acting from the guy that plays Edward Wayne Brady, who, that actor is actually from the Boondock Saints, one of the
That's right.
characters from the Boondock Saints. Um, and the scene where, so there's a part of the movie where they ask him what he wants for his last meal. He says a
Mhm.
cheeseburger, or I think that's what he says. And then later, Nefarious takes him over again and then says he doesn't want anything, just for the sheer enjoyment of torturing him, right? And then there's a point where, right before he's going into the electric chair, because that's another way that the demon was torturing him, was by choosing the electric chair. Just before then, he's in his cell, and he's himself, just Edward Wayne Brady, in tears, terrified of the death penalty, terrified of what's coming, and he says, "Where's my cheeseburger?" And he's like in tears, crying, and then the the officer says, "You said you didn't want anything, right?" And he just in that moment, the absolute like loss of hope that's displayed by the actor there is just really good. It's not a positive scene by any means, but I mean it's hard to say that that's my favorite scene, but I just think it was so well done that that's the part of the movie that probably sticks out most to me.
Yeah, that was one of my top scenes, acting wise. Um, the abortion scene, uh, I think was pretty eye opening, where just the sheer applause and celebratory nature, um, of that happening. Um, I think maybe that was the scene that you would say was overacted a little bit, but I actually thought that was pretty good. I just the sheer excitement to watch or to feel that evil happening. I thought was well done.
Yeah, I don't remember thinking that one was overacted um, at all. Um, but yeah, I think that was and that was kind of that was a turning point in the story too. That was very pivotal to the doctor actually coming around to believing truth. But at the exact same time, um, it was a point where his anger was really escalating towards Nefarious too, which ultimately brought about his decision. Um, but yeah, I agree with that. Um, and then just a couple biblical, in terms of theology about demons and things like that. I think generally the kind of things that were presented in the film are true. So, like for example, demons torturing their host in Mark chapter 5, but then specifically verse 5. It's a story of a demon possessed man. Um, and I'll read a little bit more than just verse 5, but it says, so starting in verse 1, it says, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of Gerasenes, and Jesus had stepped out of the boat immediately. There met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains. But he wrenched the chains apart and broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. So, like this demon led action to harm
Mhm.
himself, just like we see Nefarious do to Edward Wayne Brady in the movie. Demons offering wealth and prosperity. We actually, when Jesus is tempted, that's one of the very things that Satan offers to Jesus during that period of time when Jesus is being tempted by the devil. And then my only other observation beyond those two things is just kind of sitting there realizing that in this story, the guy we're rooting for is the one who believes all the wrong things, and the demon we're rooting against is the one who believes all the right things.
Right.
It's just a weird, very weird position, and it's interesting. Um, but the demon is the one presenting all of the right moral things, even though professing that he hates all of those things. He hates that those things are true, but it's just weird. Kind of a weird situation to be in. I don't know what you thought about that.
But that's why the movie's good.
Yeah,
Up
yeah,
until
absolutely. Up until the end. Yeah,
up until
up
the end.
until the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. That's all I got for this one. But Nefarious, if you guys haven't watched it, go check it out. Just remember, it's only WatchWell approved up until the screen goes black and the gun goes off. Up until then, you're on your own. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this episode, and send your favorite episode to a friend. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and be on the lookout for more WatchWell content, more videos, just so you guys are in the loop. If you are listening and you want more content, the first and third Friday of each month is when you're going to get a new movie review. And if you want to head on over to the YouTube channel, we're going to chop up a lot of the podcast episodes and make them smaller clips, so it's easier to watch. You don't have to sit down and watch the entire 45-minute to hour and 20-minute episode. You can get some of the topics, individual bite-sized pieces, at your own convenience. So check out the YouTube channel for that. Hey guys, it's Parker from the WatchWell Podcast. If you like this video, we want to go ahead and have you subscribe right here on this button. If you want to watch the full podcast episode, go ahead and click right here. And if you want to watch another WatchWell clip, go ahead and click right here. And remember, if you're going to watch well. We'll see you in the next one.